Hello everybody and welcome back to Unscripted. Today, we are reviewing Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. Which one though?
The new one, live action one, that came out in No.
It came out this year.
It came out this year. Days are just confusing. In March. It was March.
It came out in March. Yes. It came out in March. We're a couple months late. I do believe it's no longer in theaters? Question mark?
It's no longer in theater. Sorry. It's no longer in theaters, and it hasn't come out on any streaming platforms from what we've seen, at least yet.
Isn't it on Disney Plus now?
I didn't think it was on Disney Plus yet.
Oh, well, I don't know. Anyways, we're here to review the live-action Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. And give you our thoughts and opinions on it. Would you like to start us off here?
Sure, I can. Would you like me to hold the baby mic?
Would you like to hold the baby mic?
Would you like me to hold it?
You can. There you go.
You're not holding it while I'm talking, and I'll make sure it's nice and close to my face. My first thought process with Snow White and Seven Dwarves was I was excited to, see another live action remake. Even though most of the live action remakes aren't the best, it's kind of cool seeing like the original and how it was, especially with a movie like Snow White and like Cinderella, how long ago it came out, and seeing it now and seeing the story it's telling now. Seeing the actual movie, my opinion, everyone has their opinions, everyone's prone to their own opinions, and no one's opinions are wrong, because they're opinions. I think it was one of the worst live action movies that has come out. Mainly because of how much they changed the story. When you look at, I was just talking about this the other day with some friends. Whenever you look at all the other live action movies, Cinderella, Beauty and the Beast, Lion King, all those movies, they stayed pretty true to the story, except for they just added one thing or two. They didn't really change much. They didn't really do anything like that. With Snow White, they seem to have changed, not a lot. They seem to have more changed things than just add things, which was a decision that was made.
With those changes, a lot of those changes were pushed by a couple of the actors in the film.
Yes.
I do think that the casting was some of the casting was good.
Oh, yes.
I do believe that some of the casting was good. Contrary to popular opinion, I actually do think Rachel Zegler did a decent job.
No,
she did a pretty good job.
I agree.
I have opinions about Gal Gadot being cast, and we'll get into that a little bit later. I have very strong opinions about that. But a lot of the changes that were made were pushed by Zegler, and I believe Gadot had some push in those changes as well. It wasn't I don't think it was a bad story, though. Even though they changed it, I don't think it was a bad story.
No, I'm not saying it was a bad story. I'm just saying, from looking at it like as a straight perspective, Snow White, the original, and the live action, it's just comparative. It's not good.
They are two different stories. I do think that some of the changes they made were necessary in order to, because they took a 90-minute cartoon and turned it into a 2.5-hour feature, which isn't an easy task considering it was Snow White. It's a very simple story. However, I do have opinions about the character herself, Snow White. I don't like the changes they brought to her. They kind of made her they wanted to make her like a warrior princess. You know what I mean?
I said this to you after the movie. I thought they had tried to, if you've ever seen the movie Mirror Mirror, great movie. It's a Snow White retelling, but not actually Snow White, And so, that's a great movie, by the way. But I felt like they were trying to take that character and then the original Snow White and make it like a median like a nice little like in between of the two, and it just wasn't done well. And it's I think to stay true to the original story, they shouldn't have done that. But that's just my opinion.
I think what they did was so the original Snow White stands for like innocence, purity. Like there are different kinds of leaders, and you can lead with an innocence and a purity, and you know, and they kind of took that away from the character. Like she is grace, she is innocence, she is pure. They kind of took that away from the character, made the character something entirely new. Like, she is warrior princess, I am woman, I am strong, but kind of character now. And
but
they changed the character completely.
Yeah. They had her do that, like be like warrior princess, I am strong, but they didn't give her moments to do that. Like the moments that they gave her to be like a stronger woman was like at the end of the movie when she's like threatening the queen and she's holding whatever gun. I think she wasn't holding her. She was holding something.
This is Snow White. Why would she have a gun?
I don't know, but that's why I'm confused. She was holding something at the end of the movie. It was like threatening the queen, right? And I just felt like it was a very awkward moment because there wasn't a lot of build up to get to that point where she would have felt confident enough to be able to do that and felt brave enough to be able to stand up to the queen like that.
Yeah. While we're on the topic of live action Snow Whites, though, I do think, I'm just going to throw this in there, the best live action translation of Snow White I have ever seen is Snow White in Once Upon a Time.
Oh, yes.
And I like, they did change the character. She is a warrior princess, but she still leads with that innocence and purity and grace. She still very much has the traits that the original Snow White has, but they added traits to her. Rather than taking away their original traits, they gave her more. They added to the character rather than taking away and making a new character. Yeah. Which I wish is something that they did in this live action
But again,
film.
That goes into the fact that some actors tried to change a lot more and do a lot more than they respectively should have been able to, especially for someone who, and video proof of saying she has not seen the movie since she was like 10.
Didn't she say at some point she doesn't like Snow White?
Yeah, she also said she doesn't like Snow White, which is great. We all have our favorite princesses.
She did do a good job. I do think she did a good job.
Yes.
But my question is, why would you accept this role if you don't like the character?
And then proceeded not to watch the movie again until after you finished filming. Because there was a video that came out where she said she did finally rewatch the movie at like her age now, but it was like after filming. And I'm like, why wouldn't you watch it before you film so you can try to get a sense of the character? You know
Right.
What I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is kind of crazy. She didn't watch the film until after. Because if I were to be cast as anything that already existed.
Yes.
Any character that already existed, you bet I'm doing research, watching the movies or the TV shows or anything they've already been in, reading the books. Like, if I was cast in, like, as a character from a comic book, I'm reading every single comic book that this character has ever been seen in. I'm watching any TV shows that this character has been put into, any movies this character has put into. I am doing everything in my power to learn about this character, to properly bring it to life.
Yeah. Which I can imagine, like, for example, like Marvel really fast. Like, there's a good chance, I mean, there's no video evidence of them saying anything otherwise, but there's a good chance that the actors like try to at least read up a little bit on these comic book characters that they're playing if they didn't already read it as a child, because those comic books all came out whenever they were young and children, and so there's a good chance that they did read those comic books.
I do have an actually really good example of someone who did do this. Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn.
Yes,
she did, and I actually wrote a paper about this for a college class. Margot Robbie, when she was cast as Harley Quinn, did intensive research on the character and especially when it came to like developing her accent, but she learned as much as she could about this character. And I'm probably going to do another video talking about that, so I'm not going to talk about it much here, especially because that's not the focus of this video. But it's just to say the research for this character wasn't done, and it should have been done, because there are so many. You could have watched the original. You could have watched Mirror Mirror, Snow White and the Huntsman, Once Upon a Time. There's so much that you could have watched to do research on this character and to bring more to this character, and it wasn't done. It just was not done.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I was just going to move on to our next topic, the prince.
He's not a prince.
He's not a prince.
He's a common thief.
Which I thought was a choice. Because, again, going into play of how they're trying to make the movie a little more like Mirror Mirror rather than Snow White. Because, yes, in Mirror Mirror, the prince is a prince, but he has a lot more, or huntsman mentality, not huntsman, but, like, bandit mentality, in the Mirror Mirror adaptation, while also being, like, a little bit of a prince. And in this movie, they made him a common thief, which I thought was interesting.
I think part of the reason they made him not a prince was because they wanted Snow White to be the hero, you know? Which is great and all.
Yes.
She does have her moments, though some of them may not be the greatest of moments. She does have her moments, but it still does have him also being the hero, which is what they didn't want. They wanted the woman to be the hero, but here it's like a two-way thing. Like, he got to save her, she saved him a couple times, she then saved the kingdom, and he was there.
But, I mean, you can still do that, and he could still be a prince. Belle saves the beast from the wolves in the woods, just saying. And he's a prince. I
want to talk about Gal Gadot.
Go ahead. You have your opinions about her. I don't have a lot.
No. I want to talk about the music first.
Okay.
I really liked the music.
I thought the music was good. I thought some of the songs were a little out there and a choice, but I still thought the music was good.
The soundtrack was amazing, though. I do think the soundtrack was absolutely amazing, phenomenal. They kept a lot of the songs that were in the original movie. They also added some songs, and some of those songs were really good.
Yeah.
And one of those songs could have been good if you had the right person singing it.
You'll never guess which one she's talking about.
This is where I want to talk about Gal Gadot. I have very strong opinions about her in this film. Whoever said, let's give the evil queen a song. You're brilliant, first of all.
Yeah.
Whoever said, let's cast Gal Gadot and let her sing, you should be fired.
I know little to nothing about Gal Gadot.
Gal Gadot.
Gal Gadot.
We now know she can't sing.
Yes. And I was right. I know her nothing because all she's really been in is Wonder Woman, and I have not seen Wonder Woman. I've heard good things about Wonder Woman, though.
It's an okay movie.
Yeah, but
not the best, but it's an alright movie.
But
whoever let her sing, we have beef.
I think because they've done it before. They did it for Jennifer Lawrence in The Hunger Games. Jennifer Lawrence cannot sing to save her life, so they hired someone to sing for her in the movies because Katniss is supposed to be able to sing.
And respectfully, you would never know that it was somebody else singing, but they just let her sing an entire song too. A whole song,
which could have been a good song if she didn't sing.
If somebody else had sang it.
The Prince could have sang it, and it would have been better.
I really liked the Prince's song.
He did great.
It was an amazing song.
Yeah.
He did an amazing job. But yeah. That's it. I hated when she sang. I wanted to sit in the theater like this with my ears plugged, and it made me want to cry. And not in a good way.
It was already the movie was kind of already onto a little rocky start at this point. at the point in the movie where we get the song. So adding that to it was
the song was great. I'd just like to hear somebody else sing it. Anybody else. In fact, look, I'm of the opinion that Pierce Brosnan can't sing. He's the guy who plays Sam in Mamma Mia, for those of you who don't know. And Russell Crowe cannot sing. And those, as far as I know, are two opinions that are shared amongst many people.
Yeah.
Either of them could have sang this song better. And that's saying a lot.
But that goes back into the fact that, like, Disney has been adding stuff to the movies. One of the things I have really liked about Disney with these live-action movies is that they're adding new songs and adding, like, new storylines. Like, for example, Beauty and the Beast was one of my favorite live-action movies of Disney. I like that they added some more backstory with Belle and with the Beast, and I like the Beast song. Hands down, one of the best songs they've ever added to any Disney movie.
I agree.
Live action.
I agree.
Ooh, that song.
This song, the Queen song, amazing song.
Oh, yeah.
But because of who sings it, one of the worst songs you could have added to any movie. Change the person who sings it. And go back in time and fix this mistake.
And just don't cast Gal Gadot.
But yeah, maybe don't cast Gal Gadot.
That is his choice. Also, slap Rachel Zegler in the face and tell her to shut up. Because she should not have had any say in anything that happened in the movie. Let me rephrase that. Hold on. Shouldn't have had any say. She shouldn't have had as much say as they were giving her.
That is true. I agree. Yeah, they gave her a lot of power.
Because actors are allowed, especially if they're the lead, they should be allowed to, like, have some opinions, bounce some thoughts off of, like, the director and, like, the writers and stuff. They gave her too much say for this movie for someone who, again, had not watched the movie since she was a child.
Yeah. And from what I've heard about her interviews and about the questions that she's been asked, girl's a PR nightmare. Girl is a PR nightmare.
She is.
She's a good actress.
Yeah, she was great.
PR nightmare.
She was great in
Hunger Games?
Yeah, the Songbirds and Snakes. I was blanking on it. She was great in that movie, and so I was really excited to see her in this movie. And then, like, a ton of interviews started coming out about her. And then a lot of information started coming out about the movie from the decisions that she was trying to make. And I was like, I'm starting to like you just a little less.
I want to know your opinion on the dwarves. Because they're when you're thinking about the concept of this film, in the original, the dwarves were brought in as to be, like, comedic relief, right? That's what they're used as in live action as well.
Yes.
But there are two ways that you can go about this in a live action in today's day and age with all the technology that we have, but also with all of the people that we have. There are two ways. You can either do what they did and CGI the dwarves, or you can hire 7 short people.
They literally had an actor in the movie who was a dwarf, and they couldn't have hired 7 more to play the dwarves. That's all. You couldn't have hired 7 more people to play the dwarves, but you could hire 1 to play a character that, like, was added to the movie for this movie. Just saying.
I think either way it's a lose-lose situation.
100%.
Either way it is a lose-lose situation because in the context of the film they are called dwarves. That is a word that is frowned upon in society now. But then you used CGI and
it's kind of bad.
It doesn't look great. Dopey's adorable.
Loved
Dopey.
I love that Dopey talked.
Dopey spoke.
He was our narrator, which loved.
Didn't see that coming.
No, did not see that coming because he's not supposed to talk.
I knew at one point, I looked at you in the theater, I remember this, I said, Dopey's gonna speak.
Oh, yeah.
I looked at you in the theater and said that. I said, we're gonna hear Dopey's voice. Little did I know I'd been hearing his voice the entire film.
Yeah. Which I loved. And it's not, okay. The CGI dwarves it's just, it was a choice that was made. And I know, like, I think the main reason they had done the CGI is because there was the original thing where there wasn't going to be dwarves at all. So they started, like, recording the movie without them. And then there was a lot of pushback and a lot of people being like, we will fight y'all.
It's not the same movie.
So
it's not the same movie. If you take the dwarves out, it's a completely different movie.
It's a completely different movie.
They are comedic relief, but they add to the story too. Yeah. Like the original Snow White, when it was in theaters, the dwarves are the characters that made people care about Snow White. Like, they made you care about her as a character and a person as a whole. Without the dwarves, nobody really cares about Snow White. Like, where would she go? Where would the story go without the dwarves?
Exactly.
Like that at that point would be changing it too much. You'd have a completely different story. At least here, with the changes that they made, we had a similar story.
Yeah. It still was a story of, like, she went to the woods, they found her, like, passed out in the woods. Oh, wait, no, they didn't.
She found them.
She found them in this one. And, you know, they found her sleeping in their bed.
She found their house in both of them.
Oh, it's been a minute since I've seen that original. It's so real. But they found her sleeping in the bed, and then I thought it was really funny that they thought she was a giant, wasn't it?
I don't know. I don't remember what they thought she was. I don't know.
Whatever they thought she was, I thought was hilarious, honestly.
But yeah, that's what I thought about the dwarves. I really do think it was a lose-lose situation either way they went about it. Either way they went about it, it was a lose-lose. People hated the CGI, but again, with the way that they're referred to in the movies, people would have been upset about that too. So lose-lose situation. CGI, I feel like, was probably a lot more expensive to do than it would have been to hire people. But that's something I'll have to look into later, when maybe one day I decide to do a podcast episode about how the movie was made. In all, though, like, it wasn't a bad movie. A lot of it was given a bad rep, I think, because of a couple people, you all know who, because of a couple people who were cast in this film and the things they were saying and the opinions they held even before this film. People have a lot of opinions about a couple people in this film. And they are the reason that a lot of people did not go see this movie in theaters. Originally, when it was announced, people were excited. It looked like it was going to be a box office smash when they first announced it. And then all these things started happening. People started saying things they probably shouldn't have been saying. And some people were cast, and people have opinions about some of those people that were cast. And suddenly there were a lot of people that were saying they didn't want to see this movie, and it didn't. I know it didn't do as well as they wanted it to.
We saw it like 2 weeks after it came out.
Yes,
and given we saw it at like 11 o'clock in the morning because we worked a lot of nights, but I think there's only like one other person in this theater.
Oh yeah, no, it was a practically empty theater.
Yeah. I just think the main thing is, like, I think the actors just shot it down. The actors, with everything they were saying, everything that they were doing, made people not want to watch this movie anymore. And a lot of people be like, I'm just going to wait until I can watch it at home. And honestly, that's fair. And, you know, like, we would have done the same, but I mean, we pay for 3 movies a week, so I'm going to use it as much as we can.
Yeah. So I actually did still want to see this movie in theaters. I like watching things in theaters while they're there. It's just an experience. You can't get the same experience at home. So I really did want to see this movie in theaters. When they announced it, I was very excited. When I started hearing that some of the actors were saying not great things about it, I did start avoiding hearing things about it. I did start avoiding anything that said anything about Snow White because I did still want to see this movie in theaters. They could have done better.
They could have done better. And again, I think the main thing was that there was too many cooks. There's too many people trying to create this movie, and they should have just stuck to, like, the director, the writers, and, like, whoever else usually makes the decisions. And, like, if the actors wanted to have their opinions and give their thoughts, more than welcome to, please. But they shouldn't have final say. And they shouldn't have had as much decision over a movie, especially for someone who just kind of started getting her name out there in the acting world. Because, like, she was in Songbirds of a Snake before this, and then she was probably in some other stuff as before that, but you didn't really know her as well.
Yeah.
And so they just let her have a lot of power for someone who is, like, kind of just starting to get her name out there and being well known.
Mm-hmm. So, could have done better. I do think some of the casting choices should have been rethought. Gal Gadot, I'm looking at you. Whoever cast her knowing she would sing, I'm looking at you.
All of the side characters, I'm blanking on all of their names, but, like, all of
amazing.
I
liked them.
The prince's, like, friends, they were all great. I loved
them.
all of them.
I liked them.
They were so funny. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So, I mean, you can have your opinions on this movie. I did think it was a pretty good movie. Would I see it in theaters again? No. I went for the one. There are movies that I absolutely would see in theaters again. This is not one of them. And you can have your opinions on a film. Everyone's entitled to their own opinions. I do think that once this comes out on streaming services, though, give it a shot. It wasn't a great movie, but it wasn't a bad movie.
It just could have been better.
Yeah. And that is our take on the new live-action Snow White and the Seven Dwarves. Thank you for joining us. I'll see you next time.